Welcome, everyone. No better place for the Yahoo Financial Markets Summit Extra Asia 2022 than right here in Hong Kong, where founders, innovators, and builders meet. And no better time than right now as we dive into this paradigm shift to explore blockchain technology beyond crypto. What are the blockchain applications in the future? Well, our panelists right now include a founder, an innovator, and a builder. In fact, they all embody this. So we can call them all of those things. We have Brooks Entwistle, APAC MD of Ripple, and he is also the SVP Global Customer Success at Ripple. Gavin Ho, CEO of Axion Global Digits Technology, and Sean Rock, co-founder of hi. Hi, everyone.
Hey, Angie.
Hi.
All right, so guys, thank you so much for joining us. First in Icebreaker, we called this paradigm shift in 10 seconds or less. This is a challenge right at the start. What does paradigm shift mean to you? Sean, I'm going to start with you.
Wow, paradigm shift, a big change. I guess I was thinking, the lines of where the industry is going in one direction and then suddenly there's a change, whether it's an iPhone, could be a Walkman to date myself, or could be something like that. I think what we're seeing with blockchain is definitely a paradigm shift.
Love that. Gavin, what does paradigm shift mean to you?
For me, it means breaking rules, making new norms, start from afresh.
Love that. Brooks.
Paradigm shift to me means moving fast and solving world's problems in ways we hadn't thought of even a year or two ago.
Those are all amazing definitions. And for those watching right now, the definition of paradigm shift is going to mean some of those things, all of those things, and maybe something entirely different. And this conversation is really crafted to really shape that thinking. And so, each of you run very different companies based around blockchain technology and or using cryptocurrency as a form of exchange. And so many people, as we all know, are still scratching their heads on use case. So I want to start with you, Brooks. Ripple launched with XRP Ledger as its token in 2012. Could you share some success stories and how Ripple is practically being used today? You've got a little bit of roadmap there to share. So let's start with you.
Thank you so much. It's great to be a part of this super exciting panel. We have been at this for a decade, and we really started out at the very beginning with trying to find use cases, real world use cases for these digital assets, the XRP Ledger, XRP. And Ripple, the company, was built separately from the Ledger and the token, of course, to find those use cases. And very early on, from the very beginning, we settled on the notion of moving value across borders. And moving payments, moving flows, and doing that in a frictionless way, which candidly is one of the great last financial services problems to be solved globally and needing to be solved. We went out and started to talk to big financial institutions initially and realized they were not ready at that point for crypto and crypto solutions, and went on and built a network around, yes, those big financial institutions, but also fast-moving PSPs and fintechs.
Gavin, you've built up Axion Global's, I guess, digital footprint, if you will, business footprint. Tell us, what was the very first success for Axion Global Digits? What would you define that moment to be, and share that with us?
So thanks, Angie, for that question. So for us, we're a local company based in Hong Kong. We invest in companies in the blockchain space. And we also run an asset management company that helps investors to participate in this space. I think I don't think there's only one success, but one thing that's very satisfying for me is educating and demystifying almost what the promise of blockchain and crypto is to investors out there, demystifying the hype as well as the flag. And this is an ongoing process. And back in my days in the payment space, a lot of companies in TradFi, their biggest competitive advantage is in how big their balance sheet is, not how innovative or how good their products and services is. But with applying some of these technologies, you're taking away some of the risks that are traditionally inherent in this space, like counterparty risk, settlement risk. So in actual fact, what you're doing is you're lowering the access and leveling the playing field for newer innovation to take place. And
Sean, you kind of had a firsthand experience in that. You helped build crypto.com to a customer base of now millions as CMO. Now you've co-founded Hi. So what are you building? Why? And how do you plan on millions more using Hi? Tell us about it.
How do we make this something that the everyday person can actually get involved with? So when you talk about innovation, our first way to, in success stories, our first onboarding is actually through a chat app. So you can use WhatsApp or Telegram to very quickly open an account, okay? And then if you want to have a better graphical interface and you want those things, then we'll ask you to, hey, go ahead and download the app. So it's beginning to take some of the learnings that the other players had and kind of make it even faster. And so for us, we've seen a very rapid growth. We're probably the youngest ones on the panel, and that we started in early January of 2021. So born in COVID, but went to the market, started in May. And by the end of 2021, we were already up to several million, and now we're at 3.5 million members. And we do call our customers members, and that's a mindset shift, which we think is missing in financial services. Is that instead of extracting profits out of our customers, we ought to be looking at providing services to our members. So I think there are some things that's almost back to the future, and I won't go further into that, but the idea of working really to help our members to achieve the things that we've said, and really foster that mass adoption that anyone can get involved, and they can actually earn a reasonable return on deposits, and then also making that bridge between the fiat world, the traditional currency world, and the digital world. Right now, many of the companies kind of focused on crypto, which has been great, but that limits the opportunity. And what we really want to be is that bridge.
Yeah, let's talk about that big elephant in the room. A lot of people conflate cryptocurrency and blockchain technology, NFTs, metaverse into this one giant pool of what's happening in the market right now. It is so much more than price action. So I want to put cryptocurrency aside right now. I want to focus on blockchain technology for a moment. This question really is all for you. And I know, and for the audience as well, I know that we have amongst our panelists the entire spectrum covered from retail all the way up to major banks and even countries. So everyone in between. So all of you, how do you see the blockchain technology benefiting, changing traditional finance systems?
What can we do? But the underlier and the need for that is, how do we get financial services deeper into our populations, to unbanked populations, and get the services out there? I lived for years in India in a previous life, and the financial services breakthrough there, if you think about the notion of a digital identification number for all of that population, and the ability that gives the government to get services out there. And that's, I think, the blockchain technology around it. We're also doing work around carbon credits, which is another very interesting market with all kinds of issues around it. But blockchain applicability and tokenizing of carbon credits, we think on our blockchain or others, has real opportunity as well. So we're very excited, away from all the noise and hype and every conference and other activities that are going on around the world. There's real businesses being built. And I think we're just, to your earliest question about paradigm shift, we're finding these in almost all of these applications.
So Gavin, how do you regard the role of policymakers as you're building your business?
Well, I think I see policy usually when I look at it from a business perspective, it tends to be more of a hindrance in the short term, because as you rightly pointed out, right, regulators are slowly catching up, or they need to catch up to innovation. But in the long term, I see it actually as a help, as a vote of confidence in the industry. And that's exactly what we're seeing, especially in Hong Kong right now. Is there's a lot of use cases, innovative use cases, where we have to, there's a long period of education, dialogue with relevant regulators that we have to go through. And we cannot roll out these new initiatives as fast as we would like. But at the same time, I understand, they have their concerns, they have their framework they have to work out. But as I said, in the longer term, the faster we can get these policies implemented, the faster we can get these regulations underway, I think is a good thing for the development of the industry.
Brooks, I know you probably have a point to make here, so this.
I think this is it's an important discussion. I think it's a key point that was just brought up. This is a partnership with regulators that needs to happen around the world, and this is on us as an industry. And it's on the regulators to be open to these ideas. If you miss that, I think you really, I think that really is detrimental to the industry. And we have a bunch of different regulators around this region and around the broader regions that we all cover. And the story is a little bit different in every location. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But you've got to adjust your strategy and approach to each one of those.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's so many nuances when it comes to jurisdictions, but also policy. From different points of view across the Asia Pacific. Sean, you're building out a very specifically geared towards retail space. What, in your view, as you're building out your business and your opportunity to talk to policymakers through this platform, what are the things that they should consider when looking at trading and custody and all of those things for the retail level as they assess the environment in which they hope to regulate?
Yeah, maybe I kind of bridge a couple things. I think the first thing is this device is the device that has offered what Brooks was talking about, this mass access to services that people have never had before, which is great. Now, from a regulator's perspective, or actually all industry players' perspective, I think what we're seeing is that a lot of the perceptions are probably 3 to 4 years out of date. And what I specifically mean is around things like security and how the blockchain has developed, and even how cryptocurrencies have developed. Recently or earlier this year, several very high-profile hacks or thefts of cryptocurrencies were solved. And the way I try to explain it to people in a very layman's terms is, imagine you robbed a bank. But when you ran outside, the cement was wet and you left tracks. Well, in the blockchain, you leave the tracks. And I'm not sure if folks know the story, but Laura Shin did some great reporting where she broke into this and using some of the firms that exist, such as Chainalysis, CoinFirm, et cetera, people who have mapped the blockchain, and the bad actors are being seen. So I think the state of reality is today, and this is meant for a regulator audience, is that if you're a bad guy and you're going to do a financial crime, to do it with Bitcoin or one of the networks that we typically talk about, you'd be pretty foolish, because it will maybe take a little bit of time, but you will get caught. And I think that is probably one of the best things that is happening for the industry, is the rise of these network analysis companies has really allowed companies like myself to take not only things like KYC, knowing our customers and doing verification of their identity, but also knowing their wallet and knowing that this transaction's coming in. So the work that we do in terms of transaction monitoring and compliance is on par with what folks would see in traditional finance. The way that it's done, paradigm shift, is done though through electronic tools that are, I think, really, really amazing. And what has happened, as I said, in the last 3 to 4 years, it is significantly different than where we were, let's say, in 2017. So hopefully that will give regulators some pause and some opening to it, versus reading, the headline news, oh, this happened. But actually, if you wait a while and see how it all transpires, it's extremely transparent. That's kind of the core benefit of the blockchain.
So that is a great point. I want to talk about Hong Kong policy specifically, the policy changes that we're seeing in Hong Kong and licensing regime for virtual asset service providers. How might it impact the ecosystem, do you think? And Gavin, this start with you.
Okay. No, I think is a great development for Hong Kong. To my point earlier, it legitimizes the industry. It sets standards and rules by which participants have to follow. But I'm hoping it's a first step in a roadmap of laying down a level playing field for participants, right? For regulated participants and unregulated participants. And more importantly, offering the room for innovation to develop with regulated license holders, so they don't kind of being unfairly treated, or because of over stringent regulation, that they're not competitive with unregulated parties or equivalent parties in other parts of the world. And that's kind of counterproductive, where you kind of, because to Sean's point, everyone can access services through a mobile now, right? It's not like I cannot access services of other providers in other markets. My point is, it forces consumers to almost go to more unregulated venues to do their trading, to do their investments, and that's counterproductive. So we have to leave room for innovation to foster.
It's a tough road to hoe, and how have you done it there, Brooks?
I came out of the ride-hailing and delivery business, where regulators that didn't set those policies often ran into trouble, because ultimately that market determined, or the consumers there determined kind of what they wanted to do, and they lost control of it. Those that set rules early that were predictable actually had much greater success and ultimately impacted their citizens in a much more effective way. So everywhere we go in this business, we're in dialogue with regulators, whether or not it's here in Singapore where I sit or elsewhere in the world. We're trying hard to push them towards expressing and laying down rules that we can then all follow as an industry. We're very focused on the enterprise side of things, so I appreciate that it's much more difficult in some ways around the consumer side, and a lot of these regulations are very focused on the consumer front, but it's an entire industry that needs to be in this together.
Sean, what do you think? What do you think of the current regulatory landscape that is Hong Kong and across Asia?
Yeah, I was going to say, building on what Brooks and Gavin have said, I think having the predictable and the rules of the road is very important, and that's what regulators provide. I'd give regulators an opportunity to think about some things, though, in terms of the opportunity for Hong Kong. If you look at how the SFC regulates things, and how Hong Kong has not only become, depending on the year, a trading volume and IPO, top tier market. We have that, but let me give you another market that you may not think about that often, which is the gambling or gaming industry. You can look at, at Macau, but let's look at Hong Kong's largest taxpayer and largest charity, the Hong Kong Jockey Club. The regulations that they have are very stringent, but they operate an outstanding and world-class operation. And that's the kind of thing that I think we should be looking at, is setting up regimes so that the activity can happen, and it can happen in Hong Kong to Hong Kong's benefit. And the innovation, all the things that we talked about, exactly go hand in hand. So instead of looking at it like, oh, we can't do it, let's look at how we can do it and do it really well. And I guess that's really the opportunity that Hong Kong has in its hands. I think you've seen, some other markets have gone sooner, but they've actually found out that there are some issues. So, again, everybody, we, the industry, can help on the education front and in that area. But providing the best regime, I think, is the thing that I think really can set Hong Kong up for this huge opportunity.
Yeah, that is a great point. There's often the first mover advantage, but then fear of missing out. Another really interesting characteristic about Asia Pacific, and really a global, this is a global issue, but specifically across Asia, we know this, the uptick in the global digital remittance market, it continues to grow. Obviously, the distance created by the pandemic, the broader acceptance in emerging markets, but how is digital technology advancing, accelerating? What other trends are we also seeing in this space as a result of the technology of blockchain, and what we're, and the ease, the seamlessness, the frictionlessness that people can transfer money to their families and friends overseas and abroad?
I'll take a crack at this, because this is just one of the great opportunities, and I think where we see just a huge use case for this movement of value across borders. The remittance market, while it did stall a bit during the COVID, is projected to continue to grow. It's a $750 billion market. And that money that is sent across borders, as we've all seen from living in this region, is often done at usurious rates of 6-7%. It takes days to arrive. If it does at all, that money leaves workers' hands that have worked hard for that money, and their family needs it on the other end quickly. Just yesterday, I went down to Lucky Plaza in Singapore with a lady that is close to our family. Emergency need in the Philippines. We went to BKK Forex, which is a RippleNet partner, an ODL adopter as well. And that payment transferred over RippleNet through BKK Forex. Again, just the ability to have certainty. This was the hospital bill on the other end, and you just can't afford to have that go lost in 4 days, nor take 7% out of it. So this is a great one, and we're excited about what we're doing.
That's incredible. Sean, I'm curious.
Yeah, I'm very
how
keen.
you think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I have a background in financial literacy, and when people ask me why did I start Hi, this is probably the preeminent reason why. This isn't solved yet, and the great work that Ripple's done with a number of its partners, but I would say some of those partners are some of the people that have been my clients in the past, and I've looked at their balance sheets and I've seen what they make off of the hardest working people in the world, and it's actually sickening. But I would also extend it to the whole financial services network. You and I go to transfer money from Hong Kong to the UK. It's going to be lost in space for three to 4 business days. It's going to cost £25. That is insane in today's day and age. The last time I checked, it is 2022. It's not 1980. So I think from that perspective, the systems and those things, from what I can detect, yes, I've worked inside a financial services firm. They're actually using digital technology. The money is not, being put on a ship and moved. The money is instantly transferred from Hong Kong to London and sits on their balance sheet, earning interest for them, not for us. So I think changing that whole idea, and Ripple has been really at the forefront of this. But this is where what we're trying to do is provide the access to this, to make it so simple that someone just simply picks up their phone and they're able to make that transaction immediately or darn near immediately. In the blockchain space, we're really upset when it's 20 minutes. I think we need to give ourselves a little bit of a breathing space, comparing it to the 3 business days approach. But getting a transaction settled with certainty, it's on the blockchain, you can see it, and the money then is convertible if necessary into traditional currencies, or many more merchants and folks are accepting, not only stable coins, but cryptocurrencies as well. So to me, this is something that, of all the paradigm shifts, this is the one that I think we have the greatest chance to really make a meaningful impact on.
I want to talk about CeFi, centralized finance, DeFi, decentralized finance. These are 2 very distinct spaces that are reflective mirrors of each other, and now they're starting to intertwine at some points. Do you all see an eventual shift to potentially decentralized finance becoming a little bit more mainstream? Do you see more institutionals, Gavin, for example, looking for those opportunities in decentralized finance? Do you see, Brooks and Sean, for example, regulators also wanting to get into the space? What are your thoughts when it comes to decentralized finance?
I'll go first. I don't think the CeFi or DeFi is so black and white. There are certain advantages of DeFi, right? What we've seen in the last 3 months, certainly DeFi has emerged fairly unscathed because they rely on code in underwriting loan decisions rather than using human to make that decision. But on the other hand, because of the market environment, the regulated environment that we operate in, there has to be an element of centralization in the sense that someone or some entity has to be backing those transactions or operating those transactions. I don't think we're going to go away with to DeFi in that sense anytime soon. But I do see, going back to my point earlier, there's certainly a lot of room for traditional so-called CeFi companies to adopt a lot more DeFi technologies and practices from the perspective of efficiency and effectiveness, and bringing down that cost and barrier that I'm talking about.
Finally, last question for everyone. This has been a very disruptive time for the entire industry. The crypto market has taken some pretty volatile big hits in recent months. We've been observing contagion, and that has really taken up a lot of intellectual space for this industry. What do you think that we can all learn from this? And how are you responding to skeptics out there or customers who are worried about volatility?
Maybe I can take a run at it. I guess I would say the cliche would be the genie's out of the bottle. It's not going to go back in. So maybe to get that there. But I guess I will give it, and I'll try to give it with some Hong Kong flavor as well. I talk to people about the rise of e-commerce. And today, I don't think we would want to live in a world where we didn't have e-commerce, whether it's Taobao or Lala Move or any of the services that we're used to, ordering our lunch, all of those things. But if you hearken back to around 2000, there was a situation where we had a very disruptive situation where a company called AdMart was hacked, and it set back e-commerce in Hong Kong massively. People were very concerned about, oh my gosh, my credit card online, how can I possibly trust that? And I think that that's instructional for us to think about. Now, I'm not saying the events of the last 3 months were pleasant for anyone, but I think it is instructional. And when we make, or when an industry has challenges like that, and there are mistakes made, people learn, systems improve, and those type of things. And so if you go forward and say, okay, where will we be in 20 years? Will we have more or less cryptocurrency or blockchain applications? I think the answer is pretty clear, much more, just as we saw with e-commerce. So when you ask, how do I speak to people? I try to help them think about, well, remember when that was happening and people were like, I'm not so sure. I think we're going to see maybe not exactly the same thing, but something on the same scale.
I would agree. I think this historical perspective is important. And taking this to Hong Kong as well. I first landed in Hong Kong in 1991 as a young investment banker, and the markets, early markets, whether I was in equities, fixed income, many of these geographies weren't even open. These markets were still incredibly volatile. There were issues and crashes and all these events along the way. And so fast forward to this crypto decade, if you will, that we've all been involved in around digital assets. And we've had several downturns during this time already. We've all learned, this whole panel has been through these, and we learn a little bit more each time. And I love the notion that the genie is out of the bottle, because this is not going back. We're getting a little bit better every time. And one thing I would say, which I think is we've learned, whether or not you were in e-commerce at one point, Web 2.0, or you're in Web 3.0 now, this is an amazing time to build. And whether or not there's fantastic talent available, there's fantastic opportunities potentially on the M&A front or investment front, but you got to be incredibly focused on what you're after and limit the chasing of bright, shiny things, and do with everything that we're doing from a mission standpoint at Ripple and the other companies on this panel. I think we're all doing this, and that's how you succeed during these dips. There will be another one, but what you do during the downturn, I think, differentiates you long term.
Building today takes courage, takes conviction, and it takes a lot of insights. And I hope for our audience, that was very, very clear today. A lot of insights from this incredible panel about what each of you are doing, but what we heard was something extraordinarily foundational, which is this has already shifted the realities of so many people out there. And if we, to your point, Gavin, I love what you said, which is to identify the signals amidst the noise. These are great signals indeed, and I really appreciate all of you for joining. Gavin, Brooks, Sean, thank you so much for your great insights here.
Thank you, Angie. It was real fun.
Great time.
All right, those guys, great insights, shifting paradigms, inspiring every step of the way. And audience, I hope you definitely felt that. Check out more interviews for all Market Summit on Yahoo Finance web pages. I'm Angie Lau, Forecast Editor-in-Chief.